and for those of you online, welcome. And if you have questions or things, please let us know. Please don't hesitate to stop me. So, Belgium, a rare gem. The reason I call it a rare gem is when I started going there about 7 years ago, there were very little in the way of travel blogs or things like that written about Belgium. And it was kind of overlooked by France, Germany, Luxembourg, and of course but more recently it has grown in interest. But the real reason that I go to Luxembourg, and so my backstory is this. So what you see there in the center is my daughter, Michelle. She lives in Belgium. She moved there about 8 years ago. She teaches at the International School of Belgium, of Brussels. And that's her wife, Anique, and my daughter-in-law, and then my 3 granddaughters, so Zoe, Iseline, and Julia. So I've been there about 10 times. And this is primarily why I started to go, and then subsequently fell into love with Belgium and Brussels, with all the things and the interesting items to do. So that's my actual motivation. They live in a little town called Ulart. That is their town hall. A little bit bigger than the town hall we have here in Easton, but Ulart's probably about the same size as Easton. And it's just southeast of Brussels. Belgium is a kingdom. It has a king. This is, he's King Philip and his wife Matilda. They are trying very hard. If you think about Belgium, Leopold's pretty brutal kings, particularly to Congo. His relatives have a not so good history. And he's been trying to reform that and try to be more approachable to the community and people. And this is Princess Elizabeth, and she is going to be the next queen. So it will succeed to her when Philip passes away or decides to resign from being on the throne. So a nice couple, nice family, trying hard. I'm going to go through a little bit of history and geography because I think it's important to understand some of the quirks of Belgium. And we'll then primarily talk about Brussels. That is where I have spent most of my time. And then we'll talk about Antwerp, Bruges, and then some other side trips. I'm going to talk about fine dining. I like to say Belgium is French dining without the attitude. You can really get some excellent meals there. It's expensive, but it's a real experience, and we'll talk about some of those, and then also talk a little bit about some travel tips. So, just sort of orientation, Belgium is between France, Germany, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. Now, it's had an interesting history because it started out, there was a tribe, the Belgiques, in the time before, in about 100 BC, or BCE, however the term is used today. And then the Romans came in. It took them a while. They were pretty ferocious warriors, but it took them a while for the Romans to finally take over. And there are now Roman rooms and things in Belgium. And then it went back and forth. Different countries, the Franks, when Roman fell, the Holy Roman Empire took it over for a while. The Franks took it over. It went back and forth, and for a while it was part of the Netherlands, and then it broke away. So it's gone through this really sordid history that explains it. And if you look at, there's one other point I want to make. Flanders separated from the French around 1377. It was the Duke of Burgundy. I'm going to remember this because it's going to become relevant later. He was called Philip the Bold, and he married Margaret III, the Countess of Flanders, which brought, they used to do marriages to try and settled issues back in those days, right? Kings and queens, that sort of stuff. So they were trying to separate from the French. So he married a Flanders, which is Netherlands. I'll get into it a little more. And then and it was highly Catholic. But then Martin Luther did his thing, and the Netherlands became very Protestant. The northern part became very Protestant, the southern part stayed very Catholic. Matter of fact, to the point where the Catholics pushed the Protestants out and they went to the Netherlands. There's still a little bit of a rift from that. But it became an area, because it's strategically located for commerce and stuff, it's particularly for ports, it became a major place for the arts, sciences, and economic wealth. And it just happened to be strategically located, particularly with the rivers and things like that. I mentioned, if we look, I mentioned the Roman ruins. So this is Goulart again, where my daughter lives. And these are some Roman ruins that were built about 2,000 years ago. And they don't treat it very reverently, but it's there, and it's near the town square. There's a little pond in the town square, and you can go for a walk. And I found it one time. The family didn't even know it. I happened to have come across it. A little bit about Belgium is, so you can kind of see, Brussels is in the middle. We're going to talk a little bit about Antwerp, Ghent, Bruges. Bruges is towards the coast, and then the Ardennes is the mountains. So this is lowlands up to the mountains, and a lot of rivers come through here. This is roughly where the Flanders Fields, World War I, the battles were fought. Of course, there's Bastogne, the Battle of the Bulge was held here. And then what was the other major battle fought in Belgium? Waterloo, right? So 3 major world battles that were very decisive were all fought in this little country. That was originally sort of set up after Napoleon lost the Battle of Waterloo, the French, the Germans, the English, and the Netherlands, they kind of all got together and they tried to establish something that would be somewhat neutral between them. And as a consequence, it's been stepped on quite a bit. So comparing to Maryland, they're almost physically the same size. Maryland is 12,000 square miles. Belgium is just under 12,000 square miles. But Belgium is twice the population of Maryland. I did scale this map, so this map and that map are on the same scale. So you can see physically. And the interesting thing, if you think about it, Belgium is lowlands to highlands. Maryland is lowlands to highlands. Has a little bit in common there. Now, the question came up, and we'll talk about that. There's 3 official languages in Belgium. If you look at the way Belgium is structured, the northern part, which is Flanders, is Dutch-speaking, which is basically Netherlands. And then the southern part, the Wallonia, is the French-speaking section. And then there's a piece here that's next to Germany, and that speaks German. Yes?
Is Flemish the same as Dutch?
Yes, pretty much.
Okay.
I'm trying to think of an analogy, but it's kind of like you got a southern twang. But a Netherlander can tell somebody who's from Flanders. I can't tell the difference. My daughter-in-law, Anique, she speaks English, Dutch, and French fluently, right? And she works where she works. She has to interchange because for the country, the 3 languages are all in her use. So when they print documents and things like that, they do it. But interestingly enough, you've got this country, and you've got a little bit of a north-south thing going on here. People kind of like those guys. The north tends to be a little more conservative. The south tends to be a little more liberal. So interestingly enough, people's allegiance tends to be a little bit more to the cities, or what we call counties, they would call communes. And people kind of identify specifically with the communes. I think there's about 12 communes. And these are the crests. This is the crest for Flanders, and that's the crest for Walloon. Other questions about that?
But English is very prevalent.
Yes, for the most part. My wife Cindy and I, my wife is in the back, Cindy. We have no trouble in Belgium or in Brussels. Brussels area, you can speak English. In the town that they live in, which I said is south east, just down here, actually, when we go into some of the local towns to have lunch or something like that, they will only speak Dutch. So, and I'll talk about this a little later. Google Translate is your friend.
Doug, I have a question. Instead of counties, are they commons? Because I couldn't make that out when you were saying it.
Oh, communes. They're called communes.
Communes? Oh, okay. Thank you.
For those of us who are old enough, right, we remember our hippie days when we were called communes, but that's where they got the name.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's kind of a little bit of background, a little bit of history, so you have some context. We're going to now jump into Brussels. And we are actually in the center of Brussels. This is, every reasonable sized city has a town square. And this is the town square you're looking down on. It's called the Grand Place. And I'm going to start there, and we're going to build out in Belgium, in Brussels, and then we'll move out to some of the outlying cities. And as we do, I'll try and fill in on some of the culture and things like that. There are museums for every taste in Brussels. And at first I was like, what am I going to talk about? And then it was like, what can I take out so I can get this down to 90 minutes? It's walkable. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And there's all kinds of interesting monuments and history and historical things. So I'll touch on some of that. My hope in this is that I can interest you in the fact that there are a lot of really neat things, no matter what your interests are, that you can find in Belgium. In the Grand Place, people watching, there's restaurants and shops. They have festivals every year. They have this flower festival is every other year, where they bring in this just beautiful coat of flowers into the Grand Place. In the plazas, you can see these two big buildings on either side. The tall one on the left is the town hall. So that's the office building. And the smaller one on the other side is the city museum, which is a really interesting way to get a real flavor for the place. If you look around the Grand Place, if you go into the upper right-hand corner of the slide, you'll see a lot of the statues are pointing. So there's all kinds of stories about that. One person told me, well, someone has an illegitimate child, and one's pointing that you're the father, right? So there's that story that goes around. Some is that they were pointing to certain places in the town and stuff like that. But there's all kinds of interesting little things that come up over time. Now, the town hall, though, the big tall building with the spire, there is another story. So if you look at it straight on, you'll notice that the center tower is a little bit off kilter. And the story goes is that the architect, when he realized that he had built the town hall not perfectly symmetrical, went up into the tower and threw himself off and died. Now, I can't tell, I don't think that's really true, but that's one of the stories that they tell. He leapt to his death.
More likely they throw them off.
Yeah.
Right. There's, as you go around, there's all these little buildings around the town hall, and in the day, back in the 1500s, so the town goes way back, and in the 1500s, these were the guild halls, so the different guilds that had different, like beer or chocolate, different food and things like that. This is where the taxes were collected, the administrative offices were, the warehouse was. These are all now homes and stores and things like that now, but they were built for that. And if you go into the other towns, you will basically see the same concept. And so this Belgian beer museum was in what was the beer guild. Lots of little restaurants, outdoor. The one thing I'll say about Belgians, cold weather does not keep them from eating outside. The weather doesn't, and the rain doesn't either. They are very adaptable with the weather. So I'm going to give you a quick little tour. This is standing in the center of the Grand Place, and that was the town hall. It's the city. So, it's this spire that's also they jump. One thing I did throughout the presentation, and I will make a PDF version of this so that you can have it, is I tried to put websites that I've used, seen, and so on for each of the things. So if you see something you like, you can go to the website. And in PDF, I believe you'll be able to have a clickable link. So you'll see throughout my presentation these little websites. The online information is phenomenal. As I started putting this together, I realized all the things I haven't seen. So the one thing, as I said, the Brussels City Museum is a great way to see the history, a lot of the artwork, and so on. Now, in the 1500s, or 1500s, in 1695, King Louis XIV, right, attacked. This is one of the things we went back and forth, and pretty much burned down, destroyed most of the Grand Place, Brussels. And so this is one of the pictures they had in there with that fire and so on. So to give you a sense, the museum really gives you a nice way to walk through the history of the town and what had happened. The other thing about it, so a lot of interesting things have happened. For instance, Karl Marx, he used to go into this bar, a restaurant, and write. And he also would meet with other people and talk about communism and try and build up socialism. And this was called the Swan House. It has this little swan up on the thing. So back in the day, we didn't have street numbers, right? And so the way people designated their house, and the Grand Place is a great way to do this, is you go around, there was some kind of an iconic thing. In this case, it's a swan. So you would tell people, oh, Grand Place, House of the Swan. And then people would know how to go there. Well, the story goes that how did we get to building numbers? Well, that's what they had for legitimate buildings. For houses of prostitution, they actually put numbers on the houses of prostitution, and so that they knew which one. And it's said that Napoleon was the one that actually came up with that idea. And at some point they realized, the house number thing works pretty well. Why don't we just do that in general? So that's one of the little stories of Belgium's creativity. Edward Circasse, anybody familiar? I'm not sure. I will butcher spelling, but so he was one of the people that helped try to pull Brussels away from, or Belgium away from some of the invaders and so on, and he was an alderman 7 times and so on. So they honored him with this statue. I'm not so sure that's an exciting statue to see me on my deathbed, but anyway, it is said that if you go and you rub his arm, it's good luck. That's why his arm is always nice and shiny, because you'll see people going and rubbing his arm. You'll see a lot of the street entertainers with puppets are a big thing there. There's actually a really cool puppet museum that you can go to and see. And then there's like the Pigeon House. And that's where Victor Hugo wrote some of his poetry and things. And he used to live in this apartment on the second floor. And remember their numbering system, the first floor is the main floor, the first floor is actually for us would be the second floor, and so on. So it's a little different scheme. So it gives you kind of a sense. Street food. So if you're in the Grand Place, you've got lots of great choices. And the big thing, frites. Now, what they do is they fry them multiple times. That's how they get that certain crispiness on the outside and softness. So they don't just throw them like McDonald's and then pull them out. They actually go through several cycles and to get that kind of unique flavor. And of course, we have oysters, they have mussels. So you can get those, you can see this is my granddaughter, and this was at a waffle place, but they had churros. But there's all these stores where you can get this food, and that's a family size. When we ordered it, we didn't have any idea what the size was. We ended up throwing out an awful lot of waffles. Big thing in Belgium is the waffles. And you remember, we all go to a restaurant, right? We have Belgian waffles. Well, not like Belgium. Really perfectly cooked, and then all kinds of toppings. It's just amazing the different toppings and flavors and things that you can go. And you'll see these street stands, and then just outside them, there'll be a couple of tabletops, generally stand up, where you can sit and talk and eat, and then have a beer, right? So the street food is everywhere. It's always safe. The only thing that's not good for you is it packs on the pounds. But other than that, it really is a great place to go for all kinds of interesting food and flavors and things like
Does
that.
the food vary from city to city or region?
So almost every city has some unique something. Yes. But frites, mussels, waffles, they're everywhere. Yes.
You said it was expensive. How does it compare to, say, Switzerland, which is super expensive in my opinion?
So it's probably pretty similar. Yeah, I haven't been to Switzerland in a long time, but it's definitely more expensive than here. Although, like anything, like if you're a favorite, Rick Steves, right, the travel, I mean, he's got some really good tips on how you can minimize your costs and so on. And the street, like a thing of frites is probably €2. It's not crazy.
Like mayonnaise with it too. They like mayonnaise with it.
Right, they have it's kind of made, it's a little bit, it's got something else in it, but it is very similar to mayonnaise. Yeah, their fries with mayonnaise. I still not gotten to that one, man. As a matter of fact, it's interesting, my daughter, she has us bring her ketchup. Because ketchup is not a real common condiment there. So we'll bring ketchup over when we go. And she hides it because the others in the family like it too. And then it goes away. But yeah, they love their mayonnaise. I did want you, I've talked about it in the day. Belgium is beautiful at night. It is just, they really light things up in such a beautiful way. This is the Grand Place. My daughter-in-law took this picture, and it's one of those where she scanned the whole thing, so you can see, right? That's the town hall. That's the city museum. But it's just, there's just something magical about Belgium at night. It really has this wonderful, and it's very walkable. I like anything. I mean, you would walk around. I would feel safer walking around there than I would around the mall in DC. Okay? And I would walk around the mall in DC, but I kind of watch myself. Yes,
Do you have the pickpockets like you do in Rome?
they do have pickpockets. Not as bad as Rome, but I keep my wallet in my front pocket when I'm there. But I would do that in DC too. So we're going to be outside the Grand Place. How many of you have heard of Mannequin Piss? Right?
Yeah.
So, he's kind of embiotic of it. It means little pissing man. And it's a bronze statue about yay high. You can see in there, a brass statue. And it was built around the 15th century, and then something happened to it. It got rebuilt in 1619. That is the one from 1619. And the Belgians, they have kind of a whimsical, they like to make fun, enjoy life. So they dress it up in different things to celebrate different events, different activities. There's even one of Uncle Sam that they dressed him up in one time for like the 4th of July. You can see Mickey Mouse, right? The devil, I mean, it's all kinds of things. And so this is in the City Museum. They've got a collection of the costumes that have been on it. So when you go there, you might see him naked, you might see him dressed up. It depends. And it's a couple of blocks away from the Grand Place, and it's up on kind of a thing. In most cities in Europe, there were fountains, because that is the way people got their drinking water many, many years ago. So that it had an actual purpose. But somebody had kind of a sense of humor, right? The other thing, right, comic strips. We're all probably old enough to remember Tintin, which was a European comic, but not all that popular here, but somewhat popular. And the Smurfs, right? They're Belgian. They have all kinds of. So one of the things you do while you're wandering around Brussels, and I have not seen it in other cities, but definitely have seen it in Brussels, where people go and draw murals and art on the sides of buildings and things like that. And you'll see a lot of that. It's kind of fun and whimsical and different cartoon characters. And there's actually, there's a museum of comics in Belgium. And this is the link that'll take you to a thing that'll tell you where to go to visit that if you're into going to the comic museum. I didn't know they had that. Now that I saw, I'm a big comics fan. And so I intend to go next time I'm there. All right, beer, right? Belgium is about beer. And not too far from the Grand Place in Brussels, this is a little family-run brewery. They make, it's called, I think, I'm not going to say this right, Gauss beer, which means bitter. Okay, and they make two kinds. They make a regular one and they make a bitter cherry. And my daughter goes there, and the family is very nice. They have a little tasting bar where you can go and try things. You get a tour of the beer making, and then they have some festivals and things like that. So really, and there's a lot of these. It's a real art. Belgium has over 1,000 beers. And the other thing that's kind of unusual, I'll point out, so this is me, my daughter, this is Excel, and Olivia, his wife. So Olivia is Anik's sister, and this is Zoli, my granddaughter. But you'll notice she's a little bit younger here, but she's sitting at the bar with us, and that's very common in Belgium. They don't, people can come in and out. It's much different than what we see here. But people go for an evening out and to chat and to discuss and catch up. Olivia and Excel, they live up in Antwerp, which instead of Belgium, so they come down, we get together and go out. So my favorite part, and I think I've made you wait long enough, I think most of you came for the chocolate, right? Yeah. So my wife will, and these, so when I go to Belgium, you'll see them. So somebody wants to open them up and share. There's 3 kinds of chocolate there. The round one is actually baking, and it's a caramel. The heart-shaped one has a raspberry ganache, and then the triangular or the shaped one, also knock is coffee. So it's 3 different flavors. I can't promise you they don't have any calories, but you might like to try some chocolates. There should be enough for everybody to have one of each. And if you don't want to take it right now, you can take it home with you and have.
Yeah, we've got some extra here, so.
Do you have any beer?
It's the why. I'm not allowed to bring alcohol, and otherwise I would have. So I'm sorry about that. I haven't figured out how to teleport the chocolate to you all remotely. So Star Trek just hasn't quite gotten there. Yes.
They have more breweries than any other country. Is that correct?
Probably per capita. I don't know. Germany might. And we have probably quite a few too. But there's like the small family one. So yeah, you may be right. Like I said, there's over 1,000. Like I say, you could drink a different beer every day for 3 years. And it'd never be the same one.
And I also understand they have more Michelin-starred restaurants
Per capita.
per capita.
Yeah, yes, they do, and I've been before. So, and we'll talk about that. Back on the beers, the one other thing I wanted to say, the other thing that's kind of interesting when you go to the different bars and restaurants is they all have unique glasses. They've all had a glass designed or labeled for them. Now, one of the problems with that is people steal beer glasses. So if you go, protocol is do not steal beer glasses, but enjoy the uniqueness. Because, you know, it's interesting. And what I love about Belgium is the pride they take. You know, people, they take pride in their business. They take pride in their uniqueness, so on. And you can really feel it. It's kind of an interesting thing. It's very pervasive. So yeah, this is the Chocolate Museum. So, and it's a fun, it's probably about an hour and a half kind of event. There's the link for it below. They take you through the whole history of how chocolate came about, right, from the Aztecs and so on. And so the interesting thing is, right, chocolate came from the Americas, but then it was brought over to the Congo, and it thrived there, and so it's grown there as well. Belgian chocolates are not grown in Belgium, right? They're manufactured there. And so there's a history thing and there's a thing that takes you through the whole process of how chocolate is made, the drying, the harvesting, and so on, and the different. And then they also have the different kind of husks or different kinds of chocolate plants, cacao plants that are used, and they have a lot of these touch and feel. Like these let you smell the different fragrances. Each of these pipes is a little pipe that you go up and you push a button and it gives you a little whiff of the different flavors and things like that go into it. And then, of course, when you get to the top, there's these dispensers where you turn it and you can try the different kinds of chocolate that they make. So, you can see some white chocolate, dark chocolate, milk chocolate, all the different kinds of chocolates. And so it gives you an opportunity to flavor. And they also have cooking classes there. So if you have a group, some friends, you can actually go and you can make chocolates. And they'll take you through the class, show you how to do it, and it's kind of fun events. And a lot of the places, restaurants, not just chocolate places, will have an opportunity to do some kind of an activity like that. And you can do it with as few as two, like they'll pair you up with other people, or it's fun to do with, there's two couples that have gone there and get to do some interesting things. The other thing that they have in the Chocolate Museum, which I thought was really cool, is it's a virtual reality, but it basically puts you on a ship going from Belgium to South America to bargain with the S16, which I get it wrong, but for chocolate. And it is quite good. I mean, normally, I don't know how many times you've done the virtual reality 3D, you can get a little nauseous because it's not, this one was done really well. And it's kind of fun. It's interactive. You actually get to make some decisions, and it's a little bit of a game. So with kids or something, if you have grandchildren or something like that, it's fun. It's fun for me too. So that's the Chocolate Museum, also in downtown Belgium, Brussels. Chocolate Shop So you just have had chocolate from Newhouse, which I buy in 1 kilo boxes and bring back.
I can
So that's
understand
2.5, it's 2.2 pounds of chocolate. And I went in November and it was all I could do not to eat your chocolate. But what you see on the right side here, and here's the thing, Newhouse was formed in 1857. It's one of the oldest chocolate houses still, active in Belgium. And you can see actually this is the caramels that you're eating. I took the picture, and here's the hearts. So you can see the boxes, but those are just sitting out, and you just go and you can eat as much as you want. Now, I will tell you, you will quickly learn and ain't as much as you think. So, my daughter-in-law, she's very strategic, right? She brings some water and she goes and she's strategic about tasting because they put out all the different kinds of flavors. And so I went through, sacrificing for you guys. I went through and I sampled each one and figured out which ones I thought would be best to bring to this class. And at the same time, so this is the place, Newhouse, and the outlet is right here. But in the back, there's a factory where they make items, and this guy is making this giant freaking chocolate egg. And you can't see it here, but he's got a hair dryer blower, and he's warming up another egg, making the seam go away, right? To shave it and stuff like that. But I mean, the egg was freaking this big. Now, I don't think it was solid. I think it was 2 shells. I mean, my gosh, you could pick it up. But, and you can sit there and watch them as they craft these things. So, so that's one of the places that I like to shop. The other place that I like to shop, and I'm going to kill the name. Like I said, I'm terrible. My daughter was coaching me on my pronunciations before I came. So, Leonie's. But they have these crafted chocolates. And what they basically, like, for instance, these here, each color wrapping, it's the same basic chocolate, but it's got different fillings in it. So it might be hazelnut, it might be walnut, it might be raspberry. And then they do different kinds of chocolate with different flavorings and things. I mean, the problem is you can spend a half hour there trying to figure out what are you going to take home. And they do sometimes, different things, different flavors and stuff like that. So it's really fun. And I have always found the shopkeepers to be immensely helpful. You kind of tell them what you like and they'll guide you to certain things and so on. So, chocolate shopping. Enough of that. Hope you like your chocolates. Buitonium. Does anybody know the story behind this? So we're all old enough to remember World's Fairs, right? Right? Remember the 1964 World's Fair up in New York? I mean, how many went to that fair? All right. So this was the 1958 World's Fair in Belgium. And one of the things in Belgium is they became a place they had coal and they had minerals for mining, and iron was a big product that they had. And that is the iron molecule. And so they use that as their iconic thing. You know how we had the globe in the 64? And so they did that for their iconic. Well, it's still open. There's my daughter here at the bottom, and you can go up in it. And in each one of those spheres, they can put exhibits and things. Like I went there one time and there was a Magritte, the artist, the one that's kind of surreal. And what they did is they took his pictures and they actually built a little set. So like the man with the apple, I'm trying to remember some of the ones, the apple in front of his face, they actually had a man standing there and the apple. You saw in the opening slide, I had the little pipe in the upper corner, right?
Yes.
This is not a pipe.
Yes.
So he's the artist that did that. And so they had things for that. There's actually a great museum where you can go and see a lot of his works, and then others of his works are at other places. René Magritte, so it's really cool. But anyway, yes.
Doug, who's the sculptor? Who created that? What was the artist's name?
The artist that created this building?
Yeah,
I do,
the sphere.
that I don't know.
Oh, okay. I thought you said it. Sorry.
So in each one of these spheres, they have little exhibits. And one time they had different ones from René Magritte.
Okay.
So they had his artworks.
You said in your notes the designer was Andre Waterking,
Oh, okay.
and the architects were Andre and Jean Paula.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, good question. So and so up on the top, there's an observation tower. The problem is you got to climb a lot of stairs through a little tube. If you're claustrophobic, it's probably not for you, but it's kind of neat. And the view from the top is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And just you can see out over the fields, and you can see Brussels as you're close to Brussels, but then to the north, it's fields and things like that. Just really beautiful. So, and right next door is kind of a fun, what they call miniature Europe or mini Europe. And you can see on the lower right, it's a layout, and you're this giant walking past all these different things. You can see the size of the people next to the buildings, and it's kind of laid out. And if, once again, if you got children or grandchildren, it's kind of a fun thing to do. And it also an opportunity to do a little bit of a geography lesson, right, with them. So it's just there's so many interesting things. And how am I doing time? Okay. The Royal Belgian Institute of Natural Sciences, great museum, and the key thing, it's got the largest collection of dinosaur bone skeletons that you can actually go see. Okay, that's it's unique, but it also has butterflies. It's got a great mineral and gem collection too. So really an interesting, we're very fortunate, the Natural Science Museum we have here, which is excellent. Yes.
You mentioned butterflies. Are they dead butterflies, or they have one of those exhibits where the live butterflies?
Like the one here? No, it's not. It's dead. And I'm actually gonna talk about that a little bit more. But it's a fascinating exhibit. But yeah, if you get a chance to do the one in Washington, it's really cool. How many have done that? Yeah, if you haven't, it's a great exhibit. The Royal Museum of Armed Forces and Military History. So, they got the normal thing, guns and tanks, but they got medieval military, and they explain how the armor was made and all the different kinds of weapons and things that they used. That was fascinating and very well done and very easy to understand. And generally, a lot of these exhibits have an English explanation. But once again, this is where Google translates your friend, right? You go up, take the picture, translates for you, and you can show you the French or the Dutch or the German. But if I recall correctly, this is the English. And I'm going to take that back because I'm looking here, and that's Dutch, German, and French. So it's not English. But some of the museums do have some English. Once again, like I said, Google Translate can be your friend in that. Does anybody recognize this plane? This was in the Museum of Military History. It was built right here in Maryland.
Yeah.
Flying boxcar from Fairchild, right? So the Belgian military used them. This was popular in the 50s. And it was a transport. It was built up in Hagerstown. There's a great little museum of aviation in Hagerstown. If you ever want to get a chance, you get to see one up close and personal. But I was really surprised they came over the side and looked. Oh, there it was. So, the fine arts. So they've got like 6 different museums that come under the moniker of the Royal Museum of Fine Arts. The Munier Museum focuses on labor and labor movement, and people trying to struggle to get a leg up. And the art of labor and the labor of art is their theme. Then there's the Magritte Museum, right? His and other similar types of artists' work. There's also the Old Masters Museum. And I mean, it's just amazing to be able to walk up and look at these paintings from the 1500s and 1600s and see them in person. They did, and unfortunately, this was a couple of years ago, but I had not realized this, but you know, a lot of artists, and just like today, if somebody does something that's really cool, people copy them. Well, it turns out that if a painter would do something that was really cool back then, others would paint. So they did this exhibit where they got all these artists and they showed the works of the different ones that were basically the same thing. And you can see the different flourishes and colors or approaches that they did to try and make their work unique. And it was just something I had never thought of the different painters and so on. Great museum. The Royal Museum of Central Africa, and this has got a good history and a bad history. It's a cool museum in the sense that it has, I mean, it's amazing to walk up and stand next to a lion and see these animals. Now, unfortunately, you know, how they were caught and stuffed and so on, but they're there. And it's very educational. You really get a sense of the diversity and the different kinds of things that are in Africa. They have a phenomenal collection of butterflies. And you know, it's just the luminescence of the wings and so on is just incredible. And they have a lot of exhibits where they explain things really well, and there's some that are interactive, and they give you some of the history. The really bad part about it is Congo was treated absolutely terribly by particularly Leopold II, and until about, I guess, 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, there were, as part of this museum, there were exhibits that kind of exploited the people of Africa. But these have all been collected now, and about 5 years ago were put in the basement. And it's used as an exhibit to explain how this happened, why this happened, and there's kind of an apology from the museum. And they felt that as a teaching tool to help, they didn't get rid of it, but they put it in a different context. But it's a really good museum. The food is good in the restaurant too, because they have, you know, how the American Indian Museum here, you can get, yeah.
You don't get fish in it,
Oh,
but
yeah.
did they mostly use them for like mining or something, or
Mining, slave labor.
the whole game?
Oh yeah, and it's just poorly treated, exploited, take the mineral wealth, and not really give back. And then poison, because a lot of the mining leaves poisonous residue and things like that, and those kinds of things, poor health. If you're into music, so my daughter, so I have another daughter who lives here in Columbia, and she's a saxophonist. She plays the saxophone. And she just loves this museum. It's the Museum of Musical Instruments. And it doesn't look like much in the front. If you could see it, there's all these little tags of just like notes of music or pieces of music, and there's different shapes of different musical instruments. And so she likes saxophone, so I've got a picture of the saxophone exhibit there. But she said, like, the piano exhibit is just incredible. She says these intricate, beautiful pianos, and the carving and the way they were built and designed. And it explains a lot of history. And she also said there was in the basement, there's these oddball instruments, like we all probably remember the theremin, right? When you wave your hands and made the science fiction music. Well, they've got that, but they've got a bunch of other things. And they've got like one of the oldest known musical instruments. It was a stringed instrument that was found in Egypt. So there's a lot of the history as well as information about the different instruments and things like that. And she also said that if you go up to the top floor, the observation of this restaurant. And she says, this is beautiful because you can look out over the city and have a nice meal. And the food was good. So another good thing to consider. Now, Auto World. So this is not the one in the Netherlands. The one in the Netherlands is better. But they got this great auto museum. I mean, you can see all these old, and they're meticulously taken care of. And really cool museum. And actually, if you're interested, on the website, there's an online tour that's pretty cool. So, and interestingly enough, a lot of these, they have really good websites. So if you're interested in looking at the art or learning more about it, you can take basically a semester class by really digging in and looking at some of these things. So we talked about the fact that I'm going to run out of time. I've got another
40 minutes.
40 minutes, okay. It's a kingdom, and there is the royal grounds, and there are the royal greenhouses. And every year, they open them up in the late summer, and you can go and tour. So you can see my daughter and my wife, they're Cindy, going down and touring. It's huge. The colors, the flowers are just unbelievable. The variety that they have. And the grounds are beautiful. You bring a picnic lunch and you sit out on the grass and have a nice meal. It takes probably, must have taken an hour and a half to go through. It was pretty long. There's a lot in their greenhouses. So that is really, really cool. And if you're there when that's open, that's the one thing, right? You want to go, like in the beginning, I had a couple of links to Brussels and so on. You go on and see what kind of events are going to be going on when you're there. Because they're almost always having something, and sometimes it's really cool and interesting. The other thing is, right, Brussels is the capital of the EU. And so you can go, just like we can go to the capital, right, and you can go and see the European Parliament in session. And they've got a really nice museum, talks about the history and the formation, so if you're into that sort of thing, it's a great opportunity to learn about that. And then there's also the House of European History. I have not been, so some of the things that I'm showing you are things that are now on my bucket list, but I thought would be of general enough interest. But the write-up on this seemed really fascinating and a good way to kind of get the whole picture of European history. So lots of choices there. So Waterloo, right? Pointed out. Battle of Waterloo, and this is actually pretty close to where my daughters live in Bullard. It's a little village of Waterloo, and the battlefield has become this big monument, and they put this big mound of dirt up around the 1840s, 1850s, and they capped it with a lion, and the lion represented the royal families, because if you remember, right, Napoleon was not royal, and he was taking on the royal families. And as he worked, remember, on his second time, he was coming up through France, up towards Waterloo, trying to take back from the King of France, Germany, and Britain. He was kind of, giving them the finger, trying to set up a non-royal. And when he got to Waterloo, so to honor the fact that they beat him, they put a line. Now, does anybody know, there's a story about why Napoleon lost the battle of Waterloo. So Napoleon, when he fought, one of the things that made him such a impactful and strategic general was he was right there in the action. He would ride his horse, he would see what the situation was, and he would redeploy forces. And one of the things that made him so good is he had good communications with his staff, and he had good ways to get people redeployed, but he himself would see, and he was very good at thinking strategically. And so he could outmaneuver And even with lesser forces in wind battles, the night before Waterloo, he had a terrible attack of hemorrhoids. He could not ride his horse. And so the story goes that he wasn't able to command the battle in his normal manner of doing so. And so goes the theory that why he lost at Waterloo. Now, I think it was the overwhelming forces, but you know. So the one neat thing, you'll see this building down in the lower left-hand corner, that's the museum. And if you've been to Gettysburg, remember the cyclorama thing? The big painting of the day? They did basically exactly the same thing. This is a picture I took of the painting on the wall, and then they've got some ground, and you walk around, and there's little exhibits that explain to you what was going on the battlefield at each time. So, you know, it was their way. You know, we show a movie now, but back in the 1800s, they didn't have that, and they would have this picture, and it's really impressive, dramatic, because it's a huge circle. I mean, it's much bigger than this room as you walk around and see the different things. And then you walk up to the top, and you get this beautiful panoramic view. There's 266 steps or something like that, I think, on the way up. I have been to the top, so walked up and you can see the tail end of the lion. It's pretty windy when you get up to the top, but it's really an impressive view. So that's Waterloo. This is a really fun museum. I went there obviously with my granddaughter. It's an illusion. So they, you know, all those things we read in the books and it shows these pictures. Well, they are actually built so that you can step into them. And it is really impressive because the other thing, you get to see how they do it, right? So the one on the lower left, where Zoli's standing supposedly by the chair, when you take this picture, they have a place where you have to stand. Because really, the top of the chair, you can see it in the shadow, it's way back. Because when she steps on it, you think she's still there, but she's actually much further back. It's just the angle that you took the picture. So it shows you how a lot of these optical illusions are created. And it's just full of all different kinds of things. The one thing they did, which was really cool, they have this corridor you walk through, and it's in this big cylinder. And the cylinder's got all these stars and things painted on, and it's spinning around, okay? So it's got two handlebars. So you're walking through the cylinder, and there's all this going on, and you're watching this, and then you step on the platform outside of it, and you start to fall over. Because your eyes try to teach you that things should be, you know, moving, and all of a sudden you walk out and it's not moving. I mean, it was really amazing. I did it twice because I thought I could fix this. But yeah, so it's a really cool museum, fun. And like I said, most of these things aren't just for children. I mean, as adults, we can have a great time in them too. All right, we're going to leave Brussels on to Antwerp. Another beautiful, right, beautiful town square, same kind of the stepped architecture on the peaks. Somebody's statue in the middle. I'm going to take you through a couple of pictures in Antwerp because, like I said, in the night, Belgium is just amazingly beautiful. So this is the main tower in Antwerp. We're walking down one of the sidewalks and getting a little bit closer. See Anique and Olivia in the town, and the lights are starting to come on. But now up close, they illuminate things with light in just such a dramatic way. So now I'm looking up at the tower. This is a monument to the laborers who built the church. So, you know, they celebrate them also. Probably didn't pay them very well, but they celebrate their labor at least. And then, you know, the different streets and the shops come on. You see the candy shop. And the restaurants. And like I say, this was winter. People are wearing coats. It's probably November. But all the outside People sit outside and eat, drink, and yes,
Do they have the Christmas markets like they do in France and Germany?
they do not. My daughter still goes to Germany.
Okay.
She likes them better, but they do the markets. Yes. And she goes Oktoberfest to Germany, even though Belgium has other beers. Yeah, just beautiful to see the places and the shops at night, bookstores. And you'll notice, even though it's cold out, no door, just totally open. And flowers and stuff. So really pretty and great photo opportunities. The flowers in Belgium are just amazing. I didn't really focus on the parks and stuff, but every town's got beautiful parks and beautiful flowers. And it's just, you can, Google Map, I mean, makes it so easy to find these things if you're looking for them. So we all know the White Star Line, right? The Titanic. Well, its counterpart was the Red Star Line. The Red Star Line was basically set up to bring migrants to the United States. And there's a really phenomenal museum in Antwerp, because Antwerp is the port, right? And this is where the ships would come in. And, Antwerp to New York, to Philadelphia, to Boston. And there's a cutaway of what the ship would look like, so you can kind of see what the ship is. And the museum kind of takes you through all different things. But the other thing that's really neat, and if you look in the lower right-hand corner, for those of you far away, where it says Red Star Line, that is the actual building that if you were going to go take the Red Star Line, you would go in. So it's the museum. And they actually have you walk through the steps of going in and checking in and giving your papers and getting your physical, right? Because if you were sick or if you had lice or something like that, you could not get on the ship. And because the ship got paid by delivering people, and so they put somebody on the ship and they couldn't disembark at the other end, they weren't going to get paid. So they had a screening process to make sure you were going to make it to the other end. And then, checking the luggage and all that kind of stuff. And so it was really kind of cool to walk through. And so I really, if you're in Antwerp, interesting tour to take. And how many of us are immigrant families at one point or another? Right? Very likely, some of your relatives came through. I believe I have a relative that came through here. Don't exactly know, but then there's the index, you can go and look and stuff like that too. But
So how far back does that go?
I don't remember. I mean, this is in the 1800s. I don't think we quite had the immigration thing back prior to that, but it was always a shipping. I mean, even the 1500s, it was a big port. This is one of the ways why Belgium became so wealthy, because it had these ports in this critical part of Europe. So you could take all the infrastructure from Germany and France and bring it up to these ports so they could be shipped to the New World and other places and so on. So, do you know who went through this? Somebody very famous. We all know E = MC squared. Einstein. This is how he came to the United States. When he was escaping Germany.
Were they operating only with steamships, or did they go back to the wooden sailing ships?
Oh, I'm sure back since it went back far enough, they had the wooden sailing
It
ships.
was that far back.
Oh, this port's been in operation. Yes, back to the
But Red
1500s.
Star Line.
Oh, the Red Star Line, I'm not sure. I don't. 1872.
And it was a partnership between America and Belgium.
So yeah, actually, the U.S. helped fund. They knew a business opportunity when they saw it, right?
All three ports are.
Well, do you know who actually owned the White Star Line? I didn't realize this. J.P. Morgan. He freaking died on it, right? I came across that while I was looking at this, and I need to dig into it further. But so really interesting tour spot. The other, once again, I love art, and The Royal Museum of Fine Arts in Antwerp is just incredible. It's a beautiful building, but it just has all these Flemish paintings. Because remember, Antwerp's up in the Flemish section. And just amazing to go and see these pieces of work from the 1700s right up and personal. How many of you have seen the Mona Lisa? So what did you think?
It wasn't as big as I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it's very disappointing. It's behind the plexiglass, it's small, and so on. I mean, here you're seeing the Dutch masters. I mean, it's just really cool stuff. And I love Leonardo da Vinci, but I was so disappointed when I went to see that.
And they're redoing it.
Are they? They need to do something.
They're putting her in a room all by herself.
That's right. They're redoing the Louvre. Mm-hmm.
But they need to have tickets so that, because when I went in there,
Yes.
maybe 150 people. I mean, it's just like,
It's packed.
and everybody had their iPads up taking pictures. Yeah.
Yep.
So, Bruges. What's Bruges famous for? Not so much chocolate.
Artists.
The canals. But also many famous artists, because Bruges was a very wealthy, it was a port city also, different than Antwerp, but also a port city. And, but it had the canals, and you could go and ride and take a tour around the city and the canals. Really wonderful tour. My wife doesn't like boats, but she did take that one. So it's had this moat around it because it is a medieval city and it has kept its character. So if you recall the way Belgium is structured, by the water is the Flemish section, and that really became wealthy during the 1500s when trade was big. But then other places became famous trading ports and so on, and it kind of dropped off. But the southern section, the Walloon section, that became the industrial might, and they took place in the Industrial Revolution, and they had the mining and the factories and so on, and then the wealth happened down there. But because of that, the northern section kept its character because it didn't have the wealth to remake itself. And so Bruges is a really good example, as is Ghent, of what a real medieval town really looked like. And it still basically has, I've read a couple articles that if you had a map, this map is from, I think, around 1500. If you had that map, you could still find your way around.
Wow.
So it's just amazing. And it goes out to the port here, and you can't drive in the city. You have to park out here, and you have to walk in, and then you get on the canal, and they take you around. Just really fascinating town. There we are getting ready to go on the boat. Here we're cruising down some of the canals, and there's 4 companies, and they're allowed to have, those 5 companies are allowed to have 4 boats each, so there's only 20 boats. So that's how they manage the congestion on the canals. There's a great site, Bruges things to do, because there's so many things to do in Bruges. Quite frankly, Bruges, Antwerp, you could spend a week in any one of these. That's why I think, you have to kind of think through what is it you want to do. I'm fortunate that I go there frequently, so I don't have to be too choosy any one time. But yeah, and then once again, art. So I'm not going to try and pronounce it, the Groningen Museum, but really beautiful portraits. And Bruges was a center for, they had a lot of wealth. So Van Eyck was from there. They gave a lot of money so they could create just wonderful art. The Museum of the Church of Our Lady. So one of the big towers in Bruges. So remember earlier on I said in the battle back and forth, there was Philip the Bold, who and his wife, he married a Flemish queen, and they married, and that's to try to make Belgian independent of France. Well, that's where he's buried, right? There's two crypts here. There's a crypt for him and a crypt for his daughter in the church. And also, this statue, you know who carved that? Anybody recognize that? So Michelangelo, that was carved by Michelangelo. It's the first carving that Michelangelo did that was removed, that was taken out of Italy. So the gentleman who commissioned it lived in Italy, but he was Belgian, and he commissioned it, had it, brought it up. And so it's in the church. Napoleon comes along, steals it. He loses it at Waterloo. They take it back, put it back. World War II comes along. Germans steal it. Everybody remember the movie Monument Men? Right? In the Monument Men, one of the things they recover is the statue and return it. So really beautiful church and beautiful stained glass windows. It's just so massive. And it's interesting, Belgium is, I forget, it's highly Catholic. But nobody goes to church. It's just, it's worse than here. So there is also in Bruges, the museum, or the Church of the Blood. Royal blood, and it supposedly has a vial of Christ's blood. And apparently, Joseph of Arimathea, when Christ died, he took a vial of blood from Christ, and it ended up in Bruges.
What church is,
It's a
can you
church of
repeat that again, the beginning of what you were saying?
Sure. It's the Church of the Blood.
Okay.
It's not the, hang on a second. Give me a second. I'll, the Basilica of the Holy Blood is the name of the church.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, it's just fascinating, these little stories and things like that. So, Ghent. So, because of time, I'm not going to go into Ghent, but go watch her YouTube video. It's really good. So, and there's a link to her YouTube video. It's a different version of Bruges. Danone. So, it's the birthplace of Adolf Sack. Who is he? He's the inventor of the saxophone. So his home is a little museum that shows how he developed and designed the saxophone. So it ties back to the music museum in Brussels. My daughter used to say, she went here and told me, Dad, you gotta do this. So I listened to my daughter, listened to my wife. But it's a neat little city. It's beautiful. It's in this, kind of starting in the hills. So up on the top is the citadel of the Dun. It was a castle at one time, and then a prison. The Germans took it over and used it during World War II. You can go up to it. There's going up behind the church. There's 450 steps or something like that to get up to it, but there's also a cable car. And then there's this church, which is beautiful, Notre Dame de Nantes. They also have a casino there. And anybody been to casinos in so I've been to casinos like in Austria, and it's a very different experience there. It's much more sedate. It's not the slots machines and things like that. You're playing card games and things like that. It's just a very different feel and so on. I'm not much of a gambler, but it is kind of nice. So if you want to go to a casino, there's a place where you can do that. All right. Anybody ever heard of Fort Greenock? So this started out as a fortress that the Belgians had built for their military. World War II, Nazi Germany comes in, took it over, turned it into a concentration camp, and would collect Jews and other undesirables. So it's probably about 50% Jewish population went through. I think there are 3,000 went through here. the tour is unbelievable. These are the bunks that they were just lined up on. You saw where they ate, where they walked. You could see the scratches in the walls and things like that. The barbed wire around it. And this is actually a torture chamber. So the string here was used to hold a person up, and these are the implements that were used to try and get information and confessions out. It was just horrible. I would tell you, the one thing that they did in this museum, which was, I felt, very powerful, they had pictures of families. Like, you would have your family album with you and your children and so on. What they do is, as you walk through, it was time, what was happening, and the pictures, people who come off the pictures, they die. So, really powerful way. I mean, we have the Holocaust Museum, which is amazing, but it's very, very touching and something. This a little bit closer to Antwerp. Okay, Flanders, right? The World War II. Now, I haven't actually been there yet. This is one of the ones that's been on my bucket list, but my understanding is that the tours, you can actually go into the trenches and get a feel for what it must have been like. Because remember, they spent a couple of years in those trenches. You walk through no man's land. Just amazing. Get a feel for what World War I was like for the common soldier. And of course, just marvelous cemeteries commemorating the soldiers that fought in those wars. And there's actually a German cemetery also. As there are, if you go to Normandy, right, there's the American, the Canadian, French cemeteries, but then there's also a German cemetery. But really powerful. I do have one link here that I put, but I'll be honest with you, I struggled. I tried to give links that I knew had integrity and weren't overly commercial. And I was struggling here to find one that I felt was not just trying to sell you every freaking tour and so on. So I wasn't able to find a link that I felt comfortable with on Battle of the Bulge. But once again, so now this is down by Luxembourg on the lower end. And, just like we have our World War II monument on the wall, there's a monument there with all the different states and people that died. There's different buildings where the different forces were, and cannons and museums. It's amazing to go to the area. And it's one of those things where there's a couple of things like a 2-day tour, because there's just so much to see. So you can go to Flanders, you can do like a 2-day tour. You can go to the Ardennes and Bastogne. And actually the Ardennes, so my daughters, in their family, they actually have a place in the Ardennes in the woods. And it's beautiful, rolling hills and forests. It's a great place to go and, just take a vacation, obviously away from some of this, but just really enjoyable and beautiful terrain, kind of like Western Maryland. So that's about it. All right. Hiking in Belgium. It's a really easy place to hike. If you use, there's an app that I use called All Trails, and it lists 500 walks in Belgium. There's a lot of forests, a lot of national forests, and they're not all quite, gravelly paved like this, but a lot of them are. And so it's really easy to go for a walk. I was on one walk and I came across this. It's a German bunker from when the Germans occupied. It's just sitting there. I could have hopped down in it if I wanted to. And, I was just walking along. And there's a lot of religious little shrines. So not only, people have put these shrines up along these trails, and you'll see this a lot of times along roads and stuff. You'll see a little box with, a little statue of Mary or one of the saints. Very common, just all over the place. I'm not sure I know the significance behind that. But really great place to go walking and hiking. They don't have real hot summers. A lot of people don't have air conditioning, don't really need it. And the winters are generally, this one hasn't been as mild, they normally aren't too mild. I hike there all times of the year. This is beautiful. It's the Halbros. It's an ancient forest with young trees and a lot of bluebells. And in April, the bluebells come out, and you got to get there early. We learned. Yes, it's just so many people come, but it's just gorgeous to see the fields of these little flowers. But the forest, they've got a lot of the old forest with really nice trails, easy to walk. I will say, Belgium is not the most accessible for walking. Like wheelchair accessibility, some places have it, but it's spotty. But a lot of their forested trails and things like that, man, it's just easy. I mean, you could literally take a power wheelchair without.
Doug, quick
Yeah.
question. You said it was an ancient forest with young trees, and that kind of an oxymoron. What do you mean by that?
So there are older trees, and it was an old forest at the time, but most, like a lot of places, the trees have been taken out, come back again. So, Diane. So I've got what, 10 minutes?
You've got 7 minutes
Okay.
and 15 slides.
All right.
Real quick.
So this is my favorite part, obviously, right? Dining in Belgium. So this is my other daughter, Amy, and we're at one of these restaurants. They have an outdoor area where you come and dine and got it covered. Just delicious meal. It's attached to a 2-star Michelin restaurant. And that's Julia, my granddaughter there. And meals are an experience. You go to have a meal to sit and talk and enjoy each other's company in a beautiful day. This place has gardens where they grow a lot of their food, and you can go and walk through the gardens and see the food growing and things like that. You can see the different boxes, or you see the greenhouses where they grow it. So it's Bistro du Ertams. Once again, I've got the link for all of these. Yes?
What restaurant, the restaurant, what area was it?
So these are all pretty close to Brussels, but this is this restaurant is the one. This is the same restaurant. This is kind of like introducing the section, but it's that restaurant, Bistro, and and these are some of the, if you eat inside, you get a really fancy meal. And they just, they take different things, different flavors, different textures. It's just amazing. Now, it's not a lot, but, it's multiple servings. So, it adds up over time, and you're eating slow. So you get a chance to satiate your appetite. But yeah, just the different flavors and textures and things they do. And it's the chef, it's art in both flavor and visual appearance. They really, that's how I look at it. This is like going to, you get to consume a piece of art. This is the first Michelin restaurant I ever went to. It's the Chalet in the Forest. Beautiful restaurant. It has an outdoor section. That's Michelle and Anique eating at the outdoor section, so you can eat inside or outside. And the other thing that Michelle told me to tell you about is a lot of these restaurants make really excellent mocktails. Once again, the flavors, the textures, the tastes, and things like that, but without the alcohol. Incidentally, in Belgium, you do not want to drive with alcohol, right? It's 0.05, so it's much more severe than it is here for DWI. Some of the food and textures and things like that, and there's the address and the website link. And I think this is a 1-star. And of course, they had great desserts too. Often centered around chocolate, but many non-chocolate selections too. And also the other thing is, with these meals, they're really good about pairing wines. So you really get a chance to know what wine goes really well with what flavor. And the other thing is, this one, this gentleman, he's so sweet. He's the chef. The table is the name of the restaurant. He's Benjamin Labor. But this is the table we actually sat at. He came out and talked to us. He also adapted. My daughter has gluten, and he went and adapted the meal to it. And the other trick, if you're going to go eat at one of these restaurants, go for the business lunch. Significantly less expensive, but very similar in the experience. It's the same. They do not try to hustle you out. You get there at 11:30, you leave at 1:32. And then Dominio. So we're Italian, not necessarily Italian, but we're Italian, and we love Italian food. And Michelle spent time, lived in Italy, and she's pretty discriminating, but this place does Italian, and she said, it really does a good job for a non-Italian restaurant. And a restaurant not in Italy, they do the Italian food really well. So that was my those were all. Domino might not be a Michelin restaurant, but it's really good. But yeah, and as I said, it's French cuisine without the attitude. And the waiters, they explain things. The chefs almost always come out and talk to you. It's really a fun experience. Walking in Belgium. It's safe, but you got to practice some caution, right? There are, just like any place, right? You got to be careful a little bit where you walk, but most of the tourist areas and so on, not a problem. It is very walkable in the sense that things are relatively flat and stuff. I did talk about a lot of stairs and stuff, but the other thing is it's cobblestones, right? And it's stone. And so from that point of view, right, you do have to watch your step. You have to be careful. And it's not always accessible. And they also don't label things all that well, but the fact that you've got, a navigation system in your pocket, that works great. I've never had any trouble with it.
Do they put street signs on the side of the building rather than?
Yes,
Okay.
but not always. That's the problem.
I had to learn that in Budapest.
Yeah, right. So the names are on the building, they don't have signposts. But they don't always put them there. That's the problem. You get to an intersection, you're looking around. And and the curbs, they don't always have, like we have, the curbs slope up and stuff. They don't always have it yet.
Do you have to watch out for the bicycles like you do in
Oh, you do. They bicycle so much more there. My daughter bicycles to work. She goes and picks up the children from daycare and school on a bike and stuff. Yeah, biking is really common. So you do. I'm going to talk about driving in a minute. And then enter crossings. Okay, so here's the thing. They've got, the signs tell you walk, don't walk, and you got to follow that. But if you don't follow that, if the light's green, the drivers don't. And if you step out, it's not like here, where our drivers are a little cautious. They are not. So on the other hand, if there's a crossing on the road and there's no light, you put your foot on that crossing, the cars have to stop. And they do. So, the point is, if they think you're going to do it, they still stop. So my thing is, if you come to a crossing that doesn't have a light, stay back until you're ready to go, because you're going to force the traffic to stop. And you'll see the opposite caution when you're driving the car.
What do you do with that signal?
So, well, he took a time exposure, right? And this is, once again, they're a little whimsy, right? They're little men, traffic man. Trains, trams, and metro buses. You don't need to have a car. If you're in Brussels, you can get around using the trains, trams, the metro, and you can either get a Mobi card or you can get an app you put on your phone and you just use your phone. And the beauty of the app is you say, I want to go to the Illusion Museum, and it says, okay, in 10 minutes at this station, that's 20 minutes, it's a 20-step walk away, you're going to catch this number 5 train, and you're going to take it 3 stops, and you just follow the directions. And it's relatively expensive. It's like €2.50, and you can get a €750 for the whole day. And they work on everything. And I thought I will add to this the link. There's a link to the site where it explains the cards and stuff. And once you start, you've got 60 minutes to travel, so you can change. So you can get on a metro and then catch on a bus and stuff like that. But you can also get a one-day ticket. The thing is, trams and buses don't stop at every stop. So when you see your tram coming, you got to raise your hand to let them know. You don't have to go crazy, but just they're looking for you. But and if you're on it and you want to get off, you got to push the button. That's how they know. They don't, like I said, they just keep going unless they're told or asked to stop. And inspectors do come on and ask for your ticket. So if you don't activate it, you'll get caught. Driving in Belgium. Get insurance. I don't know, I have State Farm, and our insurance doesn't work in Europe. Now, I happen to have a Chase credit card, and they gave me a letter, and they cover me when I'm in Europe, so that's what I use. But AAA has a really good program where you can get insurance for your trip, but you definitely want to get insurance. You don't want to pay the auto company. It's just like 3 times more. And I already talked about steps in the walkway. When you see somebody step into the walkway, you've got to stop. It's a good road system, but it is a little congested. There's a lot of traffic. And you need to study up, and I'll make that a little. Their rules are similar, but not quite. And so it's complicated. And also, once you get off the main highways, their roads are narrow. And a lot of times it's one lane. There's like a protocol, like who gets to go, and stuff like that. It's way too, for me, we could do a whole class on driving in Belgium. But I will tell you the GPS on your phone works great in Belgium. And there's this site does a really good job of giving you the signs. But this is just a sample of all the signs. Belgium just has gone sign crazy. And they don't all make sense. Like this sign right here, pass on the left. That's pass on the right. This is, immediate right turn. So, there's 1 or 2 signs you recognize. Stop, yield, do not enter. But other than that, it's just like all these different signs. And then they've got these qualifiers. And like I said, there's these subtle rule things that fortunately with my daughters, they've kind of taught me over time. I drive here all the time. But like I said, it takes a while to learn the rules of the road. And every so often, my daughters still yell at me. A few other tips. So once again, the whimsy, right? Restroom sign. But 112 is the emergency number. Near Brussels and at the larger cities, people often speak English, but not always. As you get farther away, I think in the French section, the English is probably pretty. But north in the Dutch speaking, you'll definitely get to, but once again, Google Translate's great. Right? You can even speak into it, and it'll speak the language. Shops are closed on Sunday, right? Remember when we had blue laws in the old days, right? They still have them. They stopped it. I don't think it's laws, it's just people pay. Sunday we're off. And often shops, not restaurants, but shops will close at 6. So you gotta be careful. We got caught one time thinking we picked something up on a Sunday. Oh, no. Do learn a few courteous words in the language, right? Dutch and French. Please, thank you, pardon me. And if you start the conversation that way, they'll appreciate it, and they'll switch to English or they'll figure out a way. Cell coverage, I think, is good, but it's been expensive. So Verizon's got a pretty good deal now where you can turn something on and off if you're international, but if you don't use that, it's like $10 a day. It really builds up if you're there for long. But you can get a SIM card, right? So for about $10, you get a SIM card with a lot of data and stuff on it. Then you just replace the SIM card. It gives you a different phone number. But while you're there, it makes your navigation, your apps, and if you use like WhatsApp, they all still work. And then the other thing is they have these passes you can get that get you pay 60 euros for a pass, but then it gets you into the museums for free. Doesn't get every museum, so you kind of have to check it out when you want to go. But it's a good way to save money because the 10 euro, 20 euros starts adding up pretty quick when you go into a bunch of museums. Yes?
What's the most efficient way to get from point A to point B within the country? So from Brussels to Antwerp to
Drive.
is driving. You rent
Yeah.
a car and drive is most efficient.
Well, that's the most efficient way, but it's very easy to take the train.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't always drive, and when I don't, I'll use there's trains and train stations, but what can be a 45-minute drive to Antwerp is probably a 2-hour train ride with, you have to go into a certain station and gets the next train up. But you can get within walking distance of any big city. Any of the cities that I talked about, you can get within walking distance on the public transportation system.
Great.
And it's clean. It's nice. I mean, like our metro here in DC, it's nice.
Yeah.
You don't have to learn the traffic signs.
Right. And traffic does. I mean, the O-ring around Brussels, traffic is terrible. When we go to the airport in the morning to catch our plane back, we plan for, it's like driving 495 around the Beltway. Other questions?
Is it a direct flight to
Well, United
United?
has a direct flight. It's $9.50, but it's from Dulles, so it's a 2-hour drive, and then it goes right to Brussels. It goes to Zevenhuizen, which is the airport there, and it's 9:51 is the flight back. But I will tell you, you can do some other things like what's the Icelandic one? Reykjavik. Yeah, that's cheap. I've gotten to the point where I don't want to do a stop. But if you don't mind a stop, you can save a lot of money. And you can also, there are some flights out of Philly and Baltimore. Once again, those with stops. The one trip that I do, because we go for like 3 weeks, I actually rent a car from Enterprise, drive to the airport, drop the car off, and then when I come back, I rent another car and bring it back here. Because we got the Enterprise right here in town. That's works out cheaper than parking. National, or Dulles. Other questions?
I have one.
Yes.
What was the plane, the airline that you said originally? That goes
United.
United. Okay, thanks.
I apologize for running over. Answer your questions. If you have other questions, please hesitate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for the talk.
Yeah.
Yeah.